Hello everybody and welcome back to Random Vids. So, welcome to 2023 everybody. Let's start this year off really well with a ranking video because why not? Well, I guess not really ranking, but top 10. So, a few months ago, someone requested to do the top 10 best SpongeBob episodes. And I thought that was actually a pretty good idea. Until I realized, what happened when I tried to rank all Bluey episodes, or Timothy Goes to School, or etc., etc. Yeah, kinda got copyright claim, right? Well, this time, we're hopefully not gonna get copyright claim and I'll be able to upload these. So, unfortunately, I'm not gonna be able to do videos. It's just gonna be pictures. It's gonna kinda be how I did Pup Academy last year when I ranked all Pup Academy episodes. It was all pictures and no videos. That's how I feel like I'm gonna do. So that's how I'm gonna do SpongeBob. Anyway, so if you don't know, I love watching SpongeBob. I've seen all 12 seasons and hopefully 13 once it comes out on DVD. I love watching SpongeBob. It's a very good show in my opinion. Like I said, I've seen every season up to season 12. And a lot. Let's do a quick history lesson, alright? So, the first three seasons are what people like to say are the original classic era, best era of SpongeBob. Once the SpongeBob movie came out, everyone thought the show would end. Well, until they came out with the season 4, which people said, well, this isn't one of the original seasons, but it's still a pretty good one overall. Season 5, kind of the same situation, except there was kind of a little problem, and that was that the show started getting a little weaker as the seasons went on. Then we reached season 6, and that's basically when I guess SpongeBob threw up his hands and they just came up with random crap for episodes. That's not to say all episodes were bad in season 6, but man, definitely a lot worse than what we originally had. Season 7 was basically the same thing. I mean, yet again, I just feel like the writers were on vacation on these two seasons. Season 8, it wasn't my favorite, but I liked it better than Season 6 and 7. Actually, a lot better. Season 9 is where I say, like, this SpongeBob actually started getting back on track again, because we got some really good episodes. Once again, I mean, sure, they weren't all good, but they were definitely a lot better than what we've been getting. Season 10, I love Season 10. Heck, I'd say it's even better than the three original seasons, and that's saying a lot. Season 11, same situation. I love Season 11, and Season 12 is awesome as well. But instead of doing the top 10 SpongeBob episodes of all time, because there is literally 12 seasons of these, I think we're going to kind of do it in sections. And this isn't even going to be the top 10 best, it's going to be the top 10 worst, because that's what I like starting with. Get the worst is first, and the best is always second. So anyway, I'm going to split up into sections. The first three seasons, seasons 4 through 8, and then seasons 9 through 12 is how I'm going to split these up. So today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 least favorite episodes from SpongeBob seasons 1 to 3. And yeah, I know, there isn't a lot of actual bad episodes, but don't worry, I can definitely find a few. So, I hope you enjoy this video, hope it doesn't get copyright. So, I guess if I'm doing images, we shouldn't be getting copyright, we should be A-okay. Anyway, let's start off with number 10, and that would go to... Oh yeah, I forgot to mention to everybody. Also, it's funny because I actually have a second YouTube channel where I literally have ranked basically every season except for 12. So technically I've already ranked all seasons, but it's all on my other channel, which I'll leave that down in the descriptions. We're almost at 100 subscribers. I'm trying to get to 100 by that 1 year anniversary, which is February 14th. So, or February 16th. It was one of the two. But anyway, I've already ranked all the seasons on there, so this, I guess, will just be me more talking about why I hate these episodes. Anyway, as I was saying, let's get to number 10, which is Doing Time. So we're starting off with one of the episodes that a lot of people can say is not the best from Season 3. So basically, all we have in this episode is another one of those episodes where SpongeBob is trying to get his driver's license, but fails miserably at it. I don't hate those episodes, but they're not all good, especially a lot of the older ones. So, In this one, basically, it's Mrs. Puff, I guess, goes to jail, like literally, and she would rather be in jail than have to worry about SpongeBob. And I don't hate SpongeBob either, but I mean, there's times where he gets really obnoxious. You'll see that in One Dimensional era of SpongeBob series. Anyway, so how come a season 3 episode did so poorly? Well, I guess this episode overall, I think this episode is just really boring. It's not necessarily terrible. It just feels more boring than some of the other episodes. And yeah, it is a little annoying that SpongeBob and Patrick keep trying to, I guess, free Mrs. Puff from jail, but all she wants is to stay in jail. It gets to the point where she can't even be in jail without hearing SpongeBob. Like, bruh, come on. So yet again, not a terrible episode, but definitely one of the weaker SpongeBob episodes. Definitely one of the weaker original SpongeBob episodes. Anyway, let's go to number 9, which is Grandma's Kisses. Oh man, how come an episode's focused on SpongeBob's grandma be this low on the list? Because, I mean, I don't hate SpongeBob's grandma. Well, let's get started. So it starts off with SpongeBob going over to visit his grandma. And, before he knows, he has to go to the Krusty Krab. So his grandma offers him a ride. And of course, once they get out, his grandma gives him a kiss on the forehead. And then, of course, because everyone is so nice, they have to laugh at him for having a kissy mark on his forehead. So, because why not, I guess? So, of course, that makes SpongeBob think that he should act more like an adult and not deserve kisses from Grandma anymore. So he gets help from Patrick, of all people. Why Patrick? So they go over to SpongeBob's grandma's house again. And this time SpongeBob doesn't want any baby things allowed. Everything has to be an adult thing. And of course, Patrick has to ruin the day by him completely forgetting about their whole plan and him pretending to be the baby. So of course, we get to see a super just boring scene of Patrick getting all the love and SpongeBob just not. And then we get to see SpongeBob throw a big temper tantrum just because he wants to be an adult, but he doesn't mind getting kisses. Basically, he's annoyed at Patrick. This episode makes me wonder, is SpongeBob really an adult or a baby or both? Like, I don't even know anymore at this point. And then, of course, once he gets another kiss from his grandma, then everyone from the Krusty Krab happens to know where SpongeBob's grandma lives and spies on them and laughs at them. I am confused after watching this episode. Honestly, I really like Season 2. I think it's the best out of the 3 classic seasons, but I don't know, this episode kind of proves different, don't you think? You know how in mid SpongeBob we got all those Squidward torture episodes? Well, this one could be considered a SpongeBob torture episode. All SpongeBob wants to do is hang out with his grandma, but of course everyone at the Krusty Krab has to ruin it, and of course Patrick is no help either. On top of all that, plus SpongeBob throwing probably the biggest temper tantrum that we've seen in the show so far, this episode is really bad, honestly. Like, the first one we talked about wasn't necessarily terrible, it was just more boring. This one is boring and pretty bad, so yeah, let's just move on to number 8, which would be Muscle Bob Buff Pants. Whether if it's SpongeBob, Bluey, Pup Academy, 44 Cats, you name it, I hate any episode that has some sort of plot like Muscle Bob Buff Pants does. You don't know the plot? Well, let me tell you. So basically, SpongeBob is tired of being weak, even though we've seen him be strong in episodes before. He's tired of being weak, so he orders these big balloon arm type things, and he blows them up to make him look buff. Okay. The problem is that then he ends up telling everybody that, oh, I just somehow got strong by putting your hand under your armpit, and yeah, okay. So, of course, then he can't even pick up a simple drink. But before that, Sandy comes in and is like, whoa, I guess all of a sudden you're really strong, I guess. So she ends up signing her and SpongeBob up for lifting anchors. Okay. Not gonna lie, out of the 5 main characters, Sandy has to be one of my least favorites. I know, a lot of people like her, but I just can't stand her in some episodes, and this is definitely one of them. She signs SpongeBob up before she can even, talk to him if he wants to join or not. And the whole time, SpongeBob is trying to get that little weak drink off of his hand to try to, I guess, stop Sandy from putting his name in the thing. Heck, this dude can't even lift the straw. That's another stupid thing that I really hate about classic SpongeBob. I'm glad they don't really do that as much as SpongeBob went on, but I hated the episodes where they make SpongeBob this weak little thing, even though we see him in other episodes being super strong. Well, not super strong, but at least strong enough, normal. Anyway, so they have to not do, but like they're in this anchor contest now to see who can throw the anchor the furthest. So of course this is where the truth is exposed, because if SpongeBob can't pick a straw, there is no way he's going to be able to pick a giant anchor up. And yeah, that's what ended up happening. He tried picking it up, and his arms gave out and deflated. And everyone found out that he was faking the whole thing. And of course Sandy tries to pay him back by, making him push buttons on a remote 100 and plus times. SpongeBob didn't even want to sign up for the anchor contest. If you wouldn't have signed him up, everything could have been okay. I feel like half of it is from Sandy, and the other half is just because the writing itself. They could have done so much better with this. SpongeBob could have easily said, "Oh no, these are just anchor arms," but I want to train to see if I can do good instead of lying about it the whole time. So it isn't entirely Sandy's fault, but at the same time, Sandy, really wanted to expose SpongeBob in the worst way, and heck, she didn't even know that he had anchor arms. Just a pretty weak Season 1 episode of SpongeBob, so let's just move on to number 7, which is Fools in April. This episode is so confusing. I don't know if I'm supposed to be mad at SpongeBob or Squidward in this episode, because both can be extremely unlikable. Anyway, so it's April Fool's, SpongeBob's favorite holiday. So he plays pranks on basically everyone in Bikini Bottom. And of course, Squidward does not want anything to do with April Fools. Well, I guess not really April Fools, but more on SpongeBob trying to celebrate April Fools in front of Squidward, because I guess, I don't know, he just doesn't, because he already has to deal with SpongeBob. So how about making a SpongeBob holiday, basically April Fools? So SpongeBob gets Mr. Krabs to play a prank on Squidward to calm down to the Krusty Krab, and Squidward tells them, once he finds out that it's a prank, to not do the prank ever again. But, of course, because SpongeBob is SpongeBob, he has to be as annoying as possible throughout the whole episode, just laughing up a storm. He laughed so much that his tongue fell off. I mean, I guess if I have any positives, the jokes that SpongeBob played on some of the customers were kind of funny. I don't think anyone could ever forget the whole ice cube scene where he gives this one guy one ice cube instead of a bunch. So Squidward finally has enough and builds basically a big trap for SpongeBob. Ouch, okay. So I guess that we sort of turn on now Squidward, I guess? But SpongeBob sort of deserved it, but at the same time it was a lot. After a trash can catching SpongeBob, he cries and goes home, and then of course everyone is mad at Squidward because Squidward's prank was too much. So I guess Squidward has to now say sorry to SpongeBob, which he has never done before, nor does he ever want to. So finally, after 10 minutes of seeing Squidward trying to find ways to say sorry to SpongeBob, SpongeBob ends up pulling a prank on Squidward and saying April Fools, which makes Squidward run away and scream April Fools. Like I said, after this episode, it just makes me so confused. It's one thing to have Opposite Day, where it was actually kind of funny, and Squidward wasn't really tortured too much, nor SpongeBob. But this episode, I feel like if Squidward wasn't getting tortured, it was SpongeBob, and it was just so annoying to watch. And that's a shame, because I think April Fool's jokes are hilarious. But I mean, I guess this was the very first season, and they were still kind of learning from everything. But still, this episode could have been so much better. Sometimes I felt bad for SpongeBob, sometimes I felt bad for Squidward, so... I mean, this is definitely nothing compared to what we have later on, but this is definitely the start to some of that. Let's just move on to number 6, which would be Club SpongeBob. Okay, so hate is a pretty strong word, but I think here at number 6, I can say that we are getting into the episodes that I hate. And Club SpongeBob definitely starts that one. Oh, but how dare I do Club SpongeBob because it's such a classic episode and wah. Okay, hear me out. I know there's people who do like Club SpongeBob, and I can sort of see why, but not entirely. I mean, the scenery is kind of cool with the whole kelp forest and everything, but man, it's just a really bad episode. Okay, so anyway, Squidward is off to work. SpongeBob and Patrick are up in a treehouse. Squidward goes in because they convince him, and when he's about to get out because he realizes there's no room, the tree ends up snapping and they're all flung into a jungle. So, while Squidward tries to get out, SpongeBob and Patrick listen to this conch shell, who just tells them to do nothing. And of course, Squidward thinks it's ridiculous, like any other normal human being, and after doing nothing, a picnic literally falls from the sky. And of course, only SpongeBob and Patrick can eat them because, I mean, they're way better than Squidward, right? Look at Squidward, he's so miserable, he didn't wait like the conch shell told him to, therefore he deserves no food. So of course, SpongeBob and Patrick scarf down the whole thing, and Squidward is left with nothing. Eventually, though, some explorers end up coming to thankfully save them. Oh, but no, they are also conch shell listeners as well. So the episode ends with them doing nothing again, and I guess Squidward does it too. What a terrible, terrible episode. This was the episode that started one of the worst things ever in mid SpongeBob. Squidward torture. I don't understand why that stuff is considered funny or entertaining. It's just so obnoxiously annoying. Who wants to see an episode where Squidward suffers while, of course, everyone else doesn't? Yeah, that's what I thought. And yes, I said people, I guess, do like this episode, but just not me at all whatsoever. I mean, I guess to some this could be considered a classic SpongeBob, Squidward, and Patrick episode, but man, there are so many better ones, like, even in the same season, but ay, this one's a pain to watch. I mean, yeah, technically the camping episode also is kind of a Squidward torture episode, but I just don't feel like it's as bad as this episode. Squidward kind of, I feel like more in the camping one, I feel like Squidward was more doing it himself than actually getting stuck. Plus, at least in that one, it felt like SpongeBob and Patrick were trying to help, and it was a little more funnier than this one anyway, so Club SpongeBob is easily one of the worst, probably the second worst episode in Season 3, easily. And this is only the beginning, because there is many, many Squidward torture episodes in later seasons to come, so stay tuned for those ones, but for now, you get Club SpongeBob. I guess to be fair, when this episode was made, we didn't have Season 6 and 7 with their Squidward torture episodes, and those ones were train wrecks. So this one, I guess at the time before those ones were there, didn't feel all that bad, just because we didn't get like 50 episodes with Squidward getting tortured. However, because we have those ones now, I mean, this one just feels like a train wreck as well, and can be easily added to all those ones. It's definitely the second worst episode in Season 3, so let's just move on to number 5, which is Dumped. Oh yeah, you knew this episode was going to be on here somewhere. Oh no, another Season 2 episode. Come on, Season 2 is the bomb. I like Season 2. It's definitely the best out of the 3 original seasons. I think it goes 2, 1, 3, but I don't know. I'll have to think about that one. Anyway, so the episode starts off normally with SpongeBob and Gary playing tag, and then eventually Patrick joining in. Gary is very, I guess, affectionate around Patrick, so he ends up spending the night at Patrick's place, which SpongeBob allows. However, the next morning, Gary still doesn't want to leave Patrick, so SpongeBob starts to get a little, suspicious why he doesn't want to leave Patrick. So he starts doing things like calling Gary back over, wanting to play tag, and heck, even trying to, I guess, get him back, sort of. Heck, even bribes him with other pets, like getting a worm thing named Rex, and then another snail named Larry, and SpongeBob tries to forget Gary, but I mean, it just doesn't work. So eventually, SpongeBob and Patrick put Gary in the middle and see who Gary goes to, and of course, Gary goes to Patrick, leaving SpongeBob all alone, because of course he does. So then we get to see the second half of the episode with SpongeBob moping around because Gary didn't go to him. It's one thing for the season 4 episode, Have You Seen the Snail? Because Gary actually ran away and SpongeBob's trying to find him, and we have this actually constructed, well, good episode. This one, though, is just a mess. Gary is very unlikable, Patrick is very unlikable, and at this point he's just like, well, SpongeBob, how about I just keep Gary because he likes me better than you, ha 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 ha. And then, of course, SpongeBob just gets miserable for the rest of the episode. Eventually, Patrick ends up going over to SpongeBob's to, I guess, wash his clothes, because why not? And of course, he brings Gary as well. And SpongeBob, yet again, breaks down and wants Gary to come back. Because why the heck not? But then we learn that Gary only was following Patrick because of a cookie in his pants. Bruh, really? The episode ends nice, at least, unlike Club SpongeBob, and we get to see Gary and SpongeBob walk off just enjoying themselves. And then Patrick left all alone at the end. Oh, what a good episode ending. If it's not Squidward torture episodes, then it's Patrick being the big, stinky bully episodes, which is, yet again, a lot of what we see in mid-SpongeBob. Gary isn't really my favorite character either, and Patrick is just iffy at times, depending on seasons and episodes. But man, this one I hated basically anyone who wasn't SpongeBob. Like Grandma's Kisses and Muscle Bob Buff Pants, I just feel bad for SpongeBob, and this is another one of those SpongeBob torture episodes. Man, back in the day, we got so many of these instead of the Squidward ones. Honestly, I might almost miss them. Wait, that's going too far. Overall, I don't like how SpongeBob was treated by his pet or his best friend at all in this episode. It was just brutal to watch. Especially seeing SpongeBob mentally break down and just burst into tears every time he sees Patrick or Gary. Like, good lord. Also, I'm confused. If Gary was sleeping over at Patrick's, how come he didn't get the cookie when Patrick took his pants off? He could have easily taken the cookie when... Yeah, this episode is just so confusing, and it's just not well constructed at all. And this is easily one of the worst episodes in classic SpongeBob, but it's not the worst. Let's move on to number 4, which would be the paper. Like Club SpongeBob, to some, this could be considered one of the good classic episodes of SpongeBob, but to me, it's definitely something else. So Squidward has paper, and he throws it in SpongeBob's yard, who picks up the paper and constantly annoys his neighbor to see if he can keep the paper. And of course Squidward says, yes, no matter how much I beg, or plead, or cry, don't give the paper back to me, ever. So of course SpongeBob takes this as a promise, and keeps the paper, and of course tries to be literally as loud as possible while playing with the paper. And Squidward can hear all this stuff too, like the paper turning into an airplane or origami or literally anything you can imagine, because SpongeBob's a wild imagination. I mean, we've definitely seen better episodes with SpongeBob's imagination, right? Season 3, the Imagination Box? Anyway, so not even Squidward can relax because all he can think about is the paper. So he ends up wanting the paper back because, of course, he wants to try it. But, of course, SpongeBob being SpongeBob won't give it back. So SpongeBob shows Squidward a literal slideshow from the paper when Squidward said, don't give it back to me ever, and all that stuff. So, of course, Squidward tries everything he can to get it back. He finally then ends up literally giving SpongeBob all of his stuff, including his house, just for the stupid piece of paper. So SpongeBob finally gives him the paper just because Squidward gives him his shirt. But then when Squidward uses the paper, he finds out that it's literally just a piece of paper. It doesn't do much. He tried origami, for an example, and it just ended up turning into a big ball of paper. So, basically, then Squidward just realizes that he sold basically all of his stuff to SpongeBob just for a stupid piece of paper. So the episode ends with Patrick taking the paper and using it for old gum that he had. Wow, what a creative episode. This episode is just a whole lot of nothing. And I know this was the very first season, but We got jellyfish jam, karate choppers, etc. We had so many awesome episodes in this season. But the paper is definitely not one of them. I just feel like they ran out of ideas at the point. So they just said, wait, how about we make an episode about a piece of paper? Because why not? And I guess it sort of worked because for some, a lot of people actually do like this episode, which I do not understand at all whatsoever. At least for like Club SpongeBob, I can sort of see, but this one is just so boring and forgettable. And it could also be another one of those dumb episodes that Squidward torture episodes. You're gonna hear that a lot when we're talking about these episodes. I hate the paper so much. Even like when I first started watching season 1 of SpongeBob and I saw this episode, I just found it so boring and then just nothing. The only thing that they show us is the cool things they could do with this piece of paper, which I guess is something, but it's just not for me at all. Okay, I'm done talking about this episode. Let's just move on to number 3, which is Party Pooper Pants. So SpongeBob likes to have these special episodes. Basically, I guess more than just your usual 11 minutes. Honestly, I've seen this episode so little times because it's just so useless that I don't even remember the most of the plot. All I know is that SpongeBob hosts a party and he invites all of his friends. The only problem is that SpongeBob has a schedule on, I guess, what everyone's supposed to do, which makes SpongeBob the unlikable one, right? Because he's the one who's kind of being the bossy boss. So anyway, he ends up getting locked outside somehow and tries to get back in, but literally any possible way, it just backfires on him. Which makes SpongeBob the good guy then, I guess, because I feel bad. Honestly, I do kind of feel bad for him because, well, you know what? At the moment when he gets locked out, not really, but like, after being out there for literally the rest of the episode, it is obnoxious. Is he outside for the rest of the episode? I honestly don't even remember anymore because, like I said, I haven't seen this episode enough. All I know is that he puts on a bunny suit and pretends to break into his house, which the police come, and they're not even there to arrest him for pretending to break into his house. They arrest him because they didn't get invited to the party. Sometimes the police officers have to be the worst characters in SpongeBob, depending on the episode. If you're counting this one or like Hall Monitor from season 1, they're obnoxiously annoying. I forget how the rest of this episode goes, but it's just a pointless special. Oh, and then we have the patchy scenes, which are so useless. I don't mind like SpongeBob's 20th anniversary where we see them go out of water and into like the real life world. That was actually really funny. But seeing a random pirate just yell and blab at people is just so boring. And yes, even though the pirate's played by Tom Kenny, it's like I came to watch SpongeBob, not a random pirate that walks around and just, I don't know, tries to be as cringy as possible. But I think we can all agree on the Party Pooper Pants. It's just such a boring, useless mess of an episode. And I'm sure a lot of people can say it's the worst episode in season 3, and I can agree with it. There's just a big load of nothing in this episode. It almost kind of feels like Fools in April 2.0, but everyone is SpongeBob and SpongeBob is Squidward basically. Because at first I don't really like SpongeBob, and then after that I hate everyone else. Because SpongeBob literally gets tortured then for the rest of the episode. It's like, wow, he didn't deserve that much. Maybe to get locked out for a few minutes and then realize, oh shoot, maybe I wasn't being the best host, and try again. But nope, we got this garbage instead. We've had way better party episodes. Heck, I think Truth and Square is a lot better than this episode. I love Truth and Square, actually. It's a very underrated good episode. This one is not. With all that, let's move on to number 2, which is I'm with Stupid. This is another one of those episodes where I feel like everyone can agree that it's just another bad original SpongeBob episode. So basically, Patrick's parents are coming over, so he has to clean the house, but he's too embarrassed or I guess scared because Patrick says that his parents think that he's a big old dummy, but he's grown up a little bit, maybe not in this episode, but he has. So SpongeBob being the nice friend he is, says, "Here, I'll be even dumber than you, so then your parents will think that I'm, like, a lot dumber." Which is, honestly, for starters, this actually seems like an interesting enough episode. It's meeting Patrick's parents, etc. However, the problems start when Patrick actually thinks that SpongeBob is dumber than Patrick. Because Patrick thinks that, then it's obvious he's, like, miles dumber than SpongeBob. So now it's basically 1v3, because SpongeBob is the only one that knows he's faking it, and Patrick just goes along with his parents and says, yeah, he actually is really dumb, and makes matters worse. So SpongeBob tries to talk to Patrick and say, hey, yo, like, you need to chill a little bit, because, like, I'm just only pretending to be dumb. And, of course, Patrick still thinks that he's actually dumb. Like, he's actually way stupider than he is, so... yeah, I don't like where this episode's going. Eventually, he ends up telling Patrick's parents that, hey, I'm actually not dumb. I only did it because Patrick, like, wanted me to, so he wouldn't look like the dumb guy. But of course, Patrick's parents are kind of like Patrick 2.0, and they're also stupid. Because then they think their son is now this big science nerd guy or whatever, who actually taught SpongeBob how to read and count and all that stuff in a span of like 2 minutes that they were away talking. So of course, SpongeBob finally snaps after being 1v3 for the whole episode and just leaves. That's what he should have done at the very beginning. But hang on, the episode isn't done here. Apparently these parents aren't even Patrick's parents at all. They're just random dummies that end up in Patrick's house. And apparently Patrick's parents have been walking around all day saying, Patrick, where are you at? Because Squidward eventually comes and says, hey, yo, are these your parents? And Patrick's like, oh yeah, these are my parents. And because SpongeBob is no longer there to say, hey, yo, like, I'm dumber than Patrick, we're basically at square one by the end of this episode. Like I said, on paper, this doesn't sound bad. This could have been a cool Meet the Parents type of episode, but it ended up being a stupid Patrick episode, and we get a lot of these in later seasons. Like Club SpongeBob, though, we didn't get a lot of these back in the day, so they were very rare and very scarce. But unlike Club SpongeBob, where there was still the people who did like Club SpongeBob, there is, like, basically no one who likes this garbage episode. It's Patrick being mean and SpongeBob getting tortured for no reason. It's just such a dumb, stupid episode. The title actually works. It is very stupid. Before we get to number one, there is 2 honorable mentions that I want to talk about. So let's start. The first episode is Valentine's Day. It's not the worst thing ever, but Patrick in this episode is, like, a little annoying. I just really hate how slow-paced this episode is. Like, everything wrong went wrong. So basically, SpongeBob has a surprise for Patrick, but it doesn't come until later because Sandy is bringing it to him, but unfortunately, a bunch of birds, I guess, or scallops, whatever you want to call them, kind of slow her down. So SpongeBob goes on plan B and gives Patrick a handshake. You gave me a handshake. So of course, Patrick is not really the happiest. And then eventually Patrick just goes all gorilla mode because why the heck not? And just destroys the whole carnival, and it's basically one of the first episodes we see Patrick being super angrily mean and just angry. Like, this episode was good before Patrick became, like, mean. Overall, this episode is just eh. It's definitely one of the worst ones in Season 1. The other honorable mention I'm talking about is As Seen on TV. Okay, I better explain myself here. Before you dislike the video, let me explain why I don't like As Seen on TV as much as other episodes. So don't worry, it's not my least favorite episode in Season 3, but I don't know, there's just something about this episode that I just really don't like. I just feel like there's nothing going for this episode. SpongeBob thinks SpongeBob's in, like, a quarter of his body is in, like, a little commercial that's going on, and he thinks that makes him famous. So then he thinks he should be doing famous stuff while he's at the Krusty Krab. I forget what stuff he really did until, like, the last half of the episode, but yeah, it was super pointless, and it was very unfunny and boring. And to top things off, then SpongeBob had to sing about a guy's striped sweater. Why do people praise this song so much? It's just a 2-second song about SpongeBob singing about a random striped sweater. Yeah, it's random, which I guess is cool, but at the same time, is it really necessary? Not really. The song isn't even catchy either. This is probably why Season 3 is my least favorite out of the three. It's just too overrated compared to the other two seasons. So then the episode slowly goes back to SpongeBob flipping Krabby Patties like nothing has ever happened. It's such a pointless episode, and it's yet again just one of my least favorites in Season 3. As Seen on TV would probably be number 11, and Valentine's Day would probably be like number 12. Anyway, let's get to my number one least favorite SpongeBob episode of the classic era, and that would be Gary Takes a Bath. Good lord, this episode is just filled with nothing. It has one of the worst titles ever, Gary Takes a Bath, because that is not true at all, because in this whole episode he doesn't take a bath. Instead, we just see SpongeBob try to give Gary a bath. How boring. I don't really even need to explain this episode because there's just nothing in it. SpongeBob tries a whole bunch of different ways to give Gary a bath. And that is it. Eventually SpongeBob snaps and takes the water to Gary, which is understandable. I would be upset too. But Gary, being the nice pet he is, leads SpongeBob up a tree, thinking that this record player is Gary, which is not, which makes SpongeBob lose all of his water. Gary takes the ladder away from literally like a 10-foot tree, probably taller, and of course SpongeBob falls into some mud. Because Gary was bribing SpongeBob. You know what, SpongeBob? How about you get Larry or Rex back? I think these pets actually are better than Gary himself. Good lord, this has a lot of SpongeBob torturing in it. And by the end of the episode, SpongeBob's the one that has to take a bath. Why? What did SpongeBob do to deserve this? All he wanted was for Gary to take a bath. I mean, it seems simple enough, but it's just an episode full of nothing. The whole first half is just slowly seeing SpongeBob try to get Gary in the bath. Then the whole second half is Gary trying to get SpongeBob in the bath. Ugh, it's so dumb. I guess in this episode, Gary's the bad guy, and I feel like the bad guy wins in this episode. Which sometimes is fine, but other times, like in this episode, it's just annoying. Like, so annoying. Gary gets too awfully lucky, too, because he will just randomly teleport from literally above the bathtub into another part of the house, because that's how snails work now, I guess. Or heck, he won't even save SpongeBob from a ticking time bomb that's literally gonna kill him just to take a bath. I just really hate the whole shtick of SpongeBob trying desperately to get Gary to take a bath, but Gary's too stubborn and stupid to do it. Well, I guess Gary isn't the stupid one, but in my opinion he is, because, man, it's just such a stupid one to watch. The whole time, I just feel bad for SpongeBob, and I am ready to go full on Patrick on Gary in this episode and be like, hey, do you want water or fire? Because I will do both if you want. Speaking of which, this episode makes Pet Sitter Pat seem like a very kind-hearted, lovable episode compared to this one. At least Patrick finds a way to give Gary a bath. SpongeBob is just too gullible and stupid to find ways to give Gary a bath. At least Patrick brings a big old hose in and actually, gives him what he deserves. This is what I mean by Gary is one of my least favorite characters in the show. Not in all episodes, but man, this one just destroys his character. It doesn't help that it's one of the first episodes either. I mean, yeah, it is season 2, so we got a full season of nothing. No bad Gary episodes, I guess, but man, this one is just a horrible episode. At least in episodes like The Paper, where it's stupidly boring, but at least I don't feel annoyed at all the characters all the time. Sure, SpongeBob can get a little annoying, but I mean, at least I don't feel like I want to, go vice versa on them. And man, this one is basically, on par with some of those Patrick Stupid episodes and Squidward Torture episodes from middle seasons. It is that bad. This is what I could easily consider the worst classic SpongeBob episode. Easily. There's just no other episode I think that can top the stupidity. And if you like Gary takes a bath, then I'm glad that you can find some things in this episode that are good that I can't find. Because honestly, I can't find anything good about this episode. Actually, no, wait, I lied. The only good part of this episode is when SpongeBob says, "I'll give money to whoever takes who's the next person to take a bath in this house," and Mr. Krabs just walks in with, just kind of drives in with the bathtub and takes the money. That was the only funny and good part about this whole episode. SpongeBob, this is the time to call Patrick up, okay? Call Patrick up, and Patrick will help you give Gary a bath. He knew how to do it in Season 8 Pet Sitter Pat. I'm sure he knew how to do it in Season 2, so... Oh boy. With that, I hope you all enjoyed hearing and seeing me rant about classic SpongeBob. Next time, I'll talk about the good episodes of the classic seasons. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Bye.